Greetings, peoples of the interwebs. Jake here, and with me is the long-awaited guest and third curator interview with none other than Gbros.
Hello.
So, I think this was all part of his plan for anticipation, so that way, you listeners would go crazy, because...
Build up the hype train.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've heard there are riots in the streets, people in the Comics Amino community were just like, no, we need this interview now. You've been promising it for, like, months. So, you can quit writing, you can quit pillaging and all that stuff. The interview is finally here.
I'm back.
Yes.
I'm here. I'm ready.
All right, so I guess we'll get started with, just some of the basic questions, like, how did you first kind of get into comics and reading comics?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how old I was, but in the UK there's like this kids comic called like the Beanos. It's got like weird little characters like Dennis the Menace. I don't know if you've heard of any of these.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like Minnie the Minx and it's sort of like kiddie-ish characters up to Little Mischief.
Yeah.
And so I started off reading that, and after that I sort of went to the library one day and I saw they had loads of comics in there, so I picked one up. I'm not sure what the first one I read is. It's either Gotham City Central, Young Avengers, or Civil War. And I'm not sure which one of them it is, but I picked that up, and then that sort of got me hooked. I started reading loads. I read mostly sort of like Marvel stuff back then, but occasionally I'd pick up a DC.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up a couple of like Green Lanterns and Batman.
Nice.
And then, I sort of picked up things every now and then, but I always stuck to Marvel. And then about 3 years ago, I went in for a free comic book day, and that's like when I got really into like collecting and stuff. And that's after that I've slowly amassed a little half my room covered in comics. So,
Yeah, I think that's something that any kind of comic book collector, really any collector of any kind, that's like one of their fondest memories is like first. Going to the comic book shop and getting like their first haul, whether it be like just their first individual comic or like sort of the first time, because I'd read comics like here and there, but like I remember the first time I like actually got, I guess, like my first kind of comic haul. I got like 6 issues of just different kind of indie comics. Because at the time I was still like I wanted to read like Marvel and DC, but I was still kind of like I don't know where to start, and I hate jumping on board of like a storyline that's kind of like midway through. Because I'm just the same thing with like a TV show or whatever. I don't like to just jump in like at a random spot. So I just kind of picked up like 6. Yeah, I think it was like 6 random comics. And that I don't know. I think that's just the memory everybody has where they're kind of like, I remember back in the day when I got my first like comic book haul of this this comic and that comic by this artist and that colorist and all that stuff.
Well, I actually looked into this because I remember the first sort of single issue I got wasn't on that day. I picked it up in a charity shop, and I did look in anticipation of this question coming up, and I found it. It's the new X-Men annual #1 from 2001, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
So Grant Morrison. Yeah, so I have to look that up, and so but I don't know what happened to that. I thought I saved it because, especially as a younger kid, I saved everything. I've got loads of old Doctor Who magazines, and again, Beanos, I've got loads of them, but this one I can't find anywhere, so I might be tempted to go back and get it, being the first comic. But, other than that, I think the first like haul I got was, I think it was the time after the free comic book day, and I got issue 1 of the second New 52 Deathstroke, and I think I got the first 4 or 5 issues of Wolverines.
Nice.
Which is the one, it's just after the death of Wolverine. It's like X-23, Daken, Shogun, Mystique, Sabretooth, and those lot. So, but yeah, I think another key thing that really got me into them was the animated series, because when I was younger, especially the X-Men ones.
Oh yeah.
So the 90s X-Men one, which I've got a couple of DVDs of and been rewatching it. It's just great.
Yeah.
I used to watch that a lot, and then when the Wolverine and the X-Men came out, and I was a bit older, I watched all of that. I think I've watched that 3 times through. Justice League as well. That was like a big one.
Yeah.
But 1 second. Also Batman Animated Series as well. That was another big one.
Yeah, I feel like most people like who grew up in like late 80s, early 90s, like the three big kind of introductory like I guess introductions to comic books and comic book characters was like Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man, and the 90s X-Men show, because that's basically how I got into the comic book world. And same thing with the Justice League show and some of the other like Marvel and DC shows that came a little bit later, like in the late 90s and early 2000s. But again, that, like the Justice League was kind of an extension of the Batman and Superman animated shows. So, again, all of it was that Bruce Timm artwork and that same style and all that stuff. But yeah, like those, I don't know, something about the 90s, man. Just growing up in the 90s, like things were simpler in a lot of ways. I don't know. But, so I guess, like, who are some of your favorite comic characters, whether they be, Marvel, DC, or do you have any, like, non-Marvel, DC favorite comic book characters?
Well, it's quite a hard question, to be fair. I go for the generic, so let's go for DC, Batman, Batwoman, Dick Grayson, Tim Drake. They're sort of the big Bat family, but most of the Bat family, really. Recently, I've been getting a lot more into Green Arrow. Like, I read the Mike Grell run and the Judd Winnick run.
I haven't read the Judd Winnick run, but yeah, the Mike Grell run, like, for those of you who, like...
Flawless.
Yeah. Because that's... I think I read Year One. That was the first Green Arrow comic that I bought myself and read. And then I think shortly after that, I started reading the Mike Grell run. Because that, like, I did a lot of research, and most people, like, online were kind of like, no, this is, like, the quintessential Green Arrow run, a great starting point. And so I'm like, all right, cool. And...
it's also one of my friends, he really loves the Arrow show, and I recommended to him the Mike Grell, because I think that's probably the most like the Arrow TV show.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, for those of you who are listening and you haven't read a whole lot of Green Arrow or wanting a good starting point, Mike Grell run from the 80s, fantastic.
I haven't actually read the Longbow Hunters though. I've just read like the rest of it. So that's probably going to be the next pickup for Green Arrow. Yeah,
Longbow Hunters is a really good read too, because I think that was actually I think initially like Mike Grell just kind of signed him for like a mini series or that little limited run of the Longbow Hunters, and then. I guess he liked writing for that character, and again, people were like, "Oh, wow, this is really good." So I think that's when DC was kind of like, "Hey, man, so no, we kind of just brought you on for a limited series, but you want to keep writing?" He was like, "Sure."
Yeah. No, I like it when sort of stuff like that. There's a couple of examples throughout. Yeah, but more characters though. Flash, sort of dip in and out of Flash. Green Lanterns is a big one, especially because my brother's like a huge Green Lantern fan. So a lot of the time it's, I'm picking this up for my brother, but I'll read it like 1,000 times too,
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm mostly for DC. I go for the more sort of street level, more down, or the science fiction ones, rather than sort of your Superman where it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah. We're saying that though, one of the characters that I usually don't sort of pick up series from is Cyborg, but I read the first issue of the Rebirth series, and it's like a weird Ghost in the Shell. It's quite good. Yeah. Huh. I don't know how the rest of the series picks up. The first issue, there's a lot of the whole, am I human with robot parts, or am I a robot who's meant to think he's human? Sort of that whole Ghost in the Shell dilemma. So it's pretty good.
I feel like that's kind of the best way to go about with a character like Cyborg, because... he even though he's been around since like the 80s, he's not really had a whole lot of solo series, so he doesn't have like a huge rogues gallery or something like that. And creating new villains for characters, I feel like can always be very hit or miss. So I feel like, and also that's just a cooler angle to kind of be more of like a psychological story than good guy versus bad guy, that whole thing.
Yeah. But I think with sort of those sort of characters, though, it's very hard. Like Superman as well, I think it's very hard to get like a decent story, because if you create these huge, fantastical, over the top, almost unstoppable, to stop them. And Superman a lot of the time is it's kryptonite, but he's fine about to stop it.
Yeah.
I know. I think the newer run of Superman once again is much better, because he's got a bit more stakes. He's got a kid, and. I picked up on a whim, because I don't usually buy Superman comics, picked up issue 29, which is the start of a 2-issue arc where he fights Sinestro, and oh my god, that is brilliant, fantastic, brilliant issue.
I think that's a cool idea. too, to like, because I think that was actually one of the questions in the Q&A post that I did, where someone asked, like, pair, like, a DC, or I don't know if it's specifically DC,
Oh, yeah.
but, like, pair, like, a hero and a villain who normally wouldn't, like, be arch nemesis, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea, because it was based on that issue.
No, I love sort of issues like that, like, I can't think of one now, but again, Doctor Doom sort of become a bit more of a frenemy to Iron Man in the All New, All Different and stuff, and I really like that because there's an interesting dynamic, especially because is he reformed, is he not, and also Doctor Doom's one of those characters who, even though he's a Fantastic Four villain, could be a villain to anyone.
Yeah.
He's got the magic basis, he's got the tech basis, he's got the human basis, he's got the super basis, he's got his fingers in all the pies.
Yeah. And that's what I've always found Doctor, like, in my opinion, he's Marvel's best villain, and he's also my favorite villain, and he's also a very compelling character because I think one thing that makes any kind of villain in any medium compelling is they think that they're right, and they just have that drive where they're kind of like, no, like, I'm right, and here's why I'm, like, trying to, like, take over the world or whatever to make it in their warped sensibilities, like, to make it a better place or whatever. And that's...
Which is it's a reason why Mr. Freeze and Lex Luthor, they're such compelling villains as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're both doing it for reasons. They both think they're right, and I think you're right. Because if you know what you're doing is wrong, then it's a bit like, well, you're doing it. Like, some of the characters do come across as rather 2D. It's like, oh, I'm evil.
Yeah.
But then when you got some depth, like, again, with Doctor Doom, Lex Luthor and stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest reasons why, like, the Fantastic Four movies, though none of them are good, like, just in particular, like, I feel like I could maybe be a bit more lenient on any future movies if they at least get Doom right. Like, I'll be honest, they could squander the Fantastic Four further, and I'm like, whatever. But if they can at least get Doom right, then I'm kind of like, okay, I can give you that. Because just every time I'm kind of like, okay, you really, like, Fox are just sitting on, like, this treasure trove of great character development for a villain that, could rival that of all the other MCU villains, but they just are like, he shoots lightning in this series, and then in the most recent reboot, it's kind of like, who cares what he does? He can do this and that, and his powers...
He's connected to an alien planet or something.
Yeah.
He sort of disappears and reappears. Oh, I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. But have you heard the sort of heavy suggestion that the Legion creator is going to do a solo Doctor Doom film?
Yeah, and...
Like the Legion, dude, the TV show. Sorry.
I'm of mixed feelings, because one part of me is kind of like, okay, I like the fact that, Fox seem to be willing to take more risks with their superhero properties, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like, I'm mixed. Like, I'm like, this could either go really well, and Doom, like, Doctor Doom could be a great, like, solo movie, but then at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. So we'll see if this movie happens, and if it does happen, hopefully it'll go well.
I kind of hope it does happen, because Legion was probably one of the best TV shows this year.
I still haven't watched Legion.
Legion, X-Men.
No, I was just saying that, like, I still haven't watched the show, even though, like, I've heard nothing but good things, and I feel a little ashamed of myself for not having watched it yet.
No, it's sort of one of those shows where you're not really sure what's going on until around about episode 6, but I think once it hits you, then it's just... And even just watching back and just letting all this crazy stuff wash over you, it's just incredible.
So I guess, who are some of your favorite, like, Marvel characters?
Well, obviously, like, the X-Men and stuff. Notably, Archangel, the Wolverines.
Yeah.
As I constantly make posts about them. Cyclops, I think, even though he's sort of... I think after sort of Schism, I think he started to lose his way, and I think he started to become a bit less interested in it.
Yeah.
But he's still quite a compelling character. Jean Grey, controversial. I also like the new Jean Grey. I really like the solo series, and I really like that she's leading X-Men Blue.
Yeah.
Most of the X-Men, really. I could go on listing every X-Man. The original Captain Marvel, I think, is an underrated character and an utter gem. Thor as well, of course.
Oh yeah. I just love Norse mythology and the fact that they basically made a Norse god into a superhero and make it work. I'm just kind of like, hats off to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee.
also Hercules is increasingly
Yes.
climbing up, because I read I can't remember who it's by now, but I read some random Hercules comics, and I've read the first couple of issues of the All New All Different one, and it's just I love it. Though it's got an obscure comedy, which is just right down my alley, and it's brilliant. And I love sort of the twists on all the mythos, and it's really good.
That was one of the series that I picked up after Secret Wars, because like I knew a little bit of Hercules in the Marvel comics, and so like I remember like I saw issue 1 and I was kind of like, you know what the hell, I'll pick it up on a whim. Worst case scenario, I don't like it. But the first issue, I was kind of like, oh, I like this. And again, I like the fact that after Secret Wars, Marvel were kind of like taking risks on these obscure characters. Some of them obviously.
Yeah, but the only problem with that was most of the obscure ones ended after like 5 issues. They were still there. Like they did Thunderbolts. No, not Thunderbolts. It was the Illuminati, but there were loads of obscure characters in it. Yeah. That wasn't any good, but I know what you mean about taking risks. There was some properly bizarre. I think it was like Titana and a dwarf from might have been a Thor dwarf or something. But anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I really liked that Hercules series, and I wasn't surprised, but I was still bummed that like when I heard it got canceled, I'm kind of like, come on, especially because I really liked the direction it was heading in.
I like some sort of the more obscure things, like a little trophy collection, which is like mostly baseball cards and stuff. It's brilliant. But other characters, I'm trying to think what I've got over in the box. It's mostly X-Men stuff.
I've actually been meaning to dive more into the X-Men, just because X-Men did kind of help me get into Marvel, but I've really not read a whole lot of X-Men comics. And I don't know if that's because I've been so heavily inundated with X-Men just from like the movies and stuff like that, and some of the various TV shows over the years, that I'm kind of like, well, I've kind of get the gist of like some of the main storylines, like the Dark Phoenix saga, though very poorly executed in the movies, just from like the animated TV show, and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's the actual reason why I haven't really delved deeper into it yet, or if it's just because there's so many different characters and comics and titles that I want to read, and it's kind of like...
no, I think that's the biggest problem that scares people off, is the sheer amount of it.
Yeah.
Because like the Claremont one run for like 300 odd issues, then there was like 3 more volumes since, and then there's the X-Men title. There's so much of it that I can definitely see why it puts people off, and then it's like 14 books running at the minute. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's part of it too, because again, it's kind of like, I don't know, like which X-Men to start off with, like again, like the Chris Claremont, which I've heard is one of the best X-Men runs.
Yeah, I recommend Chris Claremont. Everything like after Second Genesis is like amazing. The first sort of like the sort of Stanley focused era before Second Genesis is a bit, it's sort of a bit iffy. Like there's occasionally a really good issue. Yeah. But no, the Claremont stuff's really good, especially sort of around the time of Dark Phoenix, like just before and just after is like that's the height of it. Yeah. Like you got, because Days of Future Past only comes like 6 issues after Dark Phoenix, I think. Really? Yeah, it's really close. I didn't know how close it was. It's ridiculous. Yeah, but most of the Claremont stuff's really good. The first run of New Mutants is really good as well. I got into that a couple of months ago and just read loads of it, and it's really good. It drifts into Rob Liefeld as well. Okay, yeah. It's quite good. Yeah, because the New Mutants started in like the 80s and kind of went into like the early 90s, didn't it? Yeah, definitely. And then I think that led into the first X-Force book, which isn't amazing, but like the first few issues is pretty good because it's just a carrying on with New Mutants and stuff. Cool. I'll add that to the never-ending list of comics I still need to read. So, like, what are... cause I know, like, we also have some similar interest in indie comics. Because that's kind of like where my... Like, again, I love Marvel and DC, but, like, indie comics is kind of like my bread and butter. Like, what are some of your favorite, like, indie comics and artists and authors? Well, indie comics, I'm ashamedly, I'm not well immersed in it, but... I think Wiccan Divine, that's probably that's the most indie I've read, and that's like really, really good. Another recommendation would be, it only just come out internationally. It's Turncoats. I got it in like a subscription box with like a sort of like a pre-release thing, and I read it and it's a very satirical look at everything, like sort of taking the mick out of some of the weird obscure. There's a cyborg bear as one of the characters,
Huh.
and it's very funny, and it's sort of the whole like detective-y elements quite mimic. Like he spends the whole time going, oh, it's definitely my wife orchestrating the whole thing. It's very funny. It's quite dark as well, and there's a little few things if you pick up in the background that are very funny. Like there's a blatant Superman and Batman parody, and the Batman's very funny. He starts like crying in the Batcave in front of everyone. It's great.
Who's the writer on that series? Because I think I've seen it in comic book shops.
I'm not sure. Give me a second, and I'll grab it off the shelf.
Because that's another one that's kind of like piqued my interest when I see it like on the shelves in a comic book store, or like on Amazon, when it's kind of like, hey, here's a comic you might like, and I'm kind of, but again, that's the thing, is I always get overwhelmed when I go to the comic book shop or see all the recommendations online, where it's kind of like, you like this series, you might like this one too, and I'm like, yeah, probably, but I don't want to break the bank.
No, that's the problem for me. It's Ryan O'Sullivan.
I don't think I've heard of him.
So XMen Noir, Marvel Zombies.
Oh, okay.
It's really funny though. Other than that, I've read a bit of Paper Girls, which is
fantastic.
Really, yeah. It's like it's a lot of saga sort of meets like Stranger Things, but with like a lot of other weird bits thrown in. It's really
hard to really describe. Because I know, like, when I bought because really I bought it just because of Brian K. Vaughan, who's my favorite writer, and whatever the dude touches is gold. So I was at the comic book shop and I bought the first volume, and the guy, as he was checking me out, was kind of like, have you read this yet? And I was like, no, I picked up because Brian K. Vaughan, and then we got like in this whole gush fest on Brian K. Vaughan. But he was kind of like, do you know what it's about? And I'm like, not really. And he kind of tried to explain it to me. He's like, I know, like, even if you try to explain like what the comic is about, he's like, you would think on paper there's no way this could possibly work at all. As
I agree. So Rogue recommended it to me, but they never explained like what the plot was.
Yeah.
So I just sort of went into it a bit blind, and I was like, oh wow, this is just crazy. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. But I feel like if you did explain the like plot or the story, it would kind of throw people off, because they're like, I don't want to read that. That just sounds like it's all over the place and kind of convoluted. But no, it's...
I was in the comic shop with my friend the other day, and they picked it up and, oh wow, the art in this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I've read that. But what's it about? And I was like, it's just sort of like Stranger Things on acid. That was how I explained it.
Yeah, that's probably a decent way of explaining it. So yeah, if you like Stranger Things, check it out, because it is kind of like Stranger Things on a lot of acid. And again, like I can't stress enough, Brian K. Vaughan is like one of the best writers out there in comics. Why the Last Man, Saga, Paper Girls, just anything the guy touches is amazing. But also the artwork too on Paper Girls.
Oh no, it's fantastic.
Because like it feels like it's something from the 80s. Like it doesn't feel like a modern like comic. It feels like it was like written and created in the 80s, which I think is another thing that Brian K. Vaughan does really well.
Especially with the pink and purple coloring.
Oh yeah, it has that very retro look to it. But yeah, I don't know, like it's also one that like when I finished reading, I still was kind of like perplexed. I'm like, this was really good, but how did this actually like work?
How does this work? What's going on? But I love it.
Yeah, and like how did I don't know, like also like how did Brian K. Vaughan like come up with this weird idea, and like how did he, which I don't know, maybe like someone like him could just pitch anything to whatever comic publisher, and they're like, all right, make it happen. But it's still kind of like, how did he pitch that idea to I guess the other people who helped him create, like the artists and I guess Image Comics as well, kind of be like, all right guys, let me give you this idea and let me know what you think. Because again, I imagine explaining that, most people would be like, what? No.
Maybe they just went, it's Brian K. Vaughan, everything he touches is gold.
Yeah, that's what would have been my response if I was like in charge of Image. I'd be like, here's the money, make it happen. I trust you.
Yeah, I think you could probably just say like, I just want to draw some pretty pictures, and I'm like, yeah, sure, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's all the money. So like, how many issues you want? 42, right? That'll do.
Yeah. Or you could just like pitch a comic. It's kind of like, okay, so here's my idea. I'm just gonna draw a comic with stick figures, and it's gonna be like a great fantasy epic with just stick figures. And they'd be like, oh, great, I love it. It's different, it's creative, it's ambitious. Go for it. And I would still read that.
That's something I've not actually seen, which I'm surprised that someone's sort of parodying the whole like stick figure comic and turning. No, I think that could work. If like someone sort of plays with it, I think that could definitely make it an interesting read. Whether it's good or not, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think someone like Brian K. Vaughan could make that work because, again, somehow he's able to always find a weird, creative way to change up a genre and all that stuff. Or I don't know, maybe even like Brian Lee O'Malley, who did Scott Pilgrim and Snot Girl, because I really like his.
I've not picked that up yet. I keep looking at it in the Amazon. As you say, whenever you add something, it's like, oh, do you want to read this as well? I'm like, I do, but
wait, which one?
That keeps coming.
Snot Girl or Scott Pilgrim?
No, Scott Pilgrim. I've read bits of, and I'm starting to get them. Snot Girl, never read it. Never. I keep meaning to, but then something else comes up, and it's like, oh.
That was kind of me with Snot Girl, actually. Because again, like I really like Brian Lee O'Malley, and I would see it at like the comic book shop, and I'm kind of like, but a lot of times when I go to the comic book shop, I'm spending like $30 to $40 on my stack of Marvel and DC, and so even though like it's only like $9.99, I'm kind of like, that's still like another $10. But then finally, I just caved in and read it, and I was like, this is fantastic.
Oh, I'll add it to the ever growing Amazon wish list.
That seems like all we can do as comic fans. Is just kind of like when we talk to each other, it's kind of like, oh, have you read this? No, let me tell you about it. And it's kind of like, I wish I had more money.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's like, I think thinking off the top of my head what's on there, I've got God of Thunder Vol.2, which is the God Bomb.
Yes. Oh my God, it's so good.
I read the God Butcher. I've been like, I need to read this. I need to get into it because, especially like after reading the Unworthy Thor, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm gonna. Yeah. So I started reading as soon as that finished, I started reading the Mighty Thor run after that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to go back and read it because I've read like the odd issue from throughout. Oh my God, his name escapes me. What's the writer called?
Jason Aaron.
Yeah, Jason Aaron. Yeah, Jesus, sorry, I feel terrible. Jason Aaron. I've been sort of picking up random issues from throughout his long tenure now.
Oh,
and I was like, no, I'm gonna start picking up all the trade. Start off with the God of Thunder, move on to Thor, then gonna pick up the Mighty Thor up to where I started collecting. Because it's just I really like most of Jason Aaron's stuff. Like
he's
some of
fantastic.
his Star Wars stuff is great.
But yeah, like God of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think he did a little bit of XMen, which is pretty good.
But yeah, like that was how I first started with Thor and Jason Aaron's work. Is the first volume of the God Butcher, just because I picked up on a whim, and my God, like the artwork, the story is just absolutely beautiful, and it actually has. I think it's actually in the second volume, God Bomb has one of my all-time favorite moments in comics, like where I was reading a certain panel. And after I read it, I actually kind of got like goosebumps. I was like, ooh, that's just so good. So that was just one of those moments where anytime someone's like, Thor recommendations, I'm like, okay, here you go. Read it like as soon as possible. Because again, it is amazing, and I would absolutely love to see this story like be the next Thor movie. Yes.
Yeah. No, I sort of, I think that'd be the perfect idea for the Thor 4.
Yes.
That'd be brilliant.
And
whether or not you want to kill off Chris Hemsworth and replace him, you can do that. But either way, that would be just a fantastic story to adapt.
Oh yeah,
you don't necessarily have to do like the time travel stuff. Even just having Gore as like the main villain and sort of taking weird elements. But if you do the whole thing, then they're gonna earn loads. That'd be great.
I mean, they could pretty much do like they could probably do a trilogy of like a new Thor trilogy just on this storyline. Which again I would be all for, because again it's this epic scale of, like, I think what makes Thor like so interesting is seeing the mythology, like the kind of Norse mythology aspect, and also the cosmic aspect, because that's one of my issues with, even though I more or less like especially the first Thor movie I like, the second one it's okay.
It's just got good parts.
But I just feel like they need to put him in space more, because that's where Thor, in my opinion, really thrives. Rather than like having him on Earth, where it's like no one can really fight him on Earth aside from like the Hulk, and maybe a handful of other characters, or at least in the MCU. Like in
Sentry maybe, but he's not in the MCU. I think no, you're right. Hulk in the MCU is the only one who can really fight him on Earth.
Like physical, like one-on-one fight. But yeah, like if they did God Butcher, God Bomb storyline in MCU, oh my god, like I would be like squealing in my seat opening day, just kind of be like, oh man, it's gonna be good.
Wake up every day. Oh my god, they're making God Butcher into a film.
Yes. Yeah, that I'd be that fan that just like keeps like posting on like social media. It's kind of like God Bomb coming in like 3 years, and just do like a countdown like every day.
Now that'd be great. So yeah. What else is in my Amazon list? The Kieran Gillen Young Avengers run, because I never, as I said, I read the original one. Like that was one of the first sort of comics I read, but the second volume like never really interested me. I keep looking at it going, yeah. Then I picked it up because it was cheap. I think it was like £6, and I was like, I'll pick it up. So I picked it up, and I was absolutely blown away. It's the Wiccan and the Vine and the original Young Avengers just sort of smashed together into this just pure gold. It's great. So I'm going to start. Well, it's only 3 volumes anyway because it got cancelled prematurely. So pick all that up. That's in the reading list. And I watched Atomic Blonde and I loved it. So The Coldest City's in there as well.
Yeah, I thought that was like the story was a little like not the best, but like the choreography and action scenes I thought were absolutely phenomenal.
Soundtrack as well.
Oh yeah, like just that like 80s soundtrack. Because again, I'm a sucker for like
sort of techno. I love the way that it sort of changes across the border as well. Like one of them sort of got that sort of slightly psychedelic sort of techno 80s, and the other one's got that 80s like hard punk.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I think that's a brilliant film. One sort of up there with Baby Driver stuff for one of the best this year.
Oh, Baby Driver. I don't think anything's going to top that for me, like in top movies of the year.
If Thor like really, really pulls out all the stops, I think Thor could just edge it.
Yeah, and also at like Edgar Wright, the director, like he's another one of those people. Gold.
He's a Brian K. Vaughan. Everything he touches is gold.
Yeah, Scott Pilgrim, something I never thought could ever be adapted into a film, and somehow he made it work. Oh my god! But yeah, Space is fantastic. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End.
Right.
He could direct a movie on like Dirt, and I'd be like, okay, he's gonna somehow make me excited about Dirt.
Even his music videos are really, because he started off like doing music videos. Even they're just like amazing.
I actually didn't know that.
One of them you see in Baby Driver, and it's based on the first scene. The first scene's based on that music video because it's got Nick Frost, Noel Fielding, and a couple of other people, and they go rob a bank, and Noel Fielding sat in the car, sort of drumming on the side, and a lot of sort of the cues match the opening scene, and then later on when he's flicking through the TV, you see that music video playing. I thought it was a fantastic little Easter egg.
I'm gonna have to check out some of his music videos, because I had no idea he started in music videos.
Oh, it's something that I picked up a while ago, and then I sort of looked into more with the sort of my current media schoolwork. I'm looking at music videos and stuff, so I was like, I'll look at Edgar Wright, because I think everything he touches is gold, as I say. So I just thought I'll look into his stuff and sort of write about that, and I was like, oh geez, this is great. So.
But I guess we should maybe get back to comics. We got on a bit of a, but I don't know. It's comic adjacent because again he did Scott Pilgrim. But
and everything he does is slightly comic booky with that sort of like colors and perfect timing and everything.
Yeah, like again, I would say like he has that very kind of comic book flair to all of his movies, if that makes any sense at all to anyone listening to this.
Which is why it's such a shame that he didn't do Ant-Man in the end. Like, you could see some of his like characteristics within the film still, because they kept bits of some of the stuff he did. But it's just a shame if we had a proper Edgar Wright Ant-Man film.
At the same time, though, I'm kind of like, if him not doing Ant-Man got us Baby Driver, I'm okay with that, because again, Baby Driver is just absolutely perfect. Like it's like I could do an entire like probably hour-long like discussion on why I love Baby Driver so much. But that's not what we're here for.
Comics. Back to comics.
Yes. So like, what are do you have like a specific like favorite kind of genre of comics, like kind of outside, or I guess even because I know like even again like the Marvel and DC comics within
it's subgenres, isn't
yeah.
it? So you sort of got like the Flash, sort of more, especially the recent runs, it's sort of sci-fi based. Then
Yeah.
You've got your magic. Mostly it's sort of like street level stuff, but a lot of the X-Men stuff as well. I don't know what quite genre that is. Mystical stuff as well. Sort of gotten more into. Sorry if you can hear any background noises.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, a lot of mystical stuff's really good. Like again, Jason Aaron's Doctor Strange run.
Fantastic.
But it's mostly sort of street level stuff. So I sort of like glancing at my bookcase, like, what's on? Yeah, it's mostly street stuff.
Cool. I don't know. Trying to think of. Do you have like a top, like do you have like an all-time favorite like comic book storyline or anything like that, or would you have to like basically narrow it down to like top like DC or top Marvel, top?
I don't even think we do that. Sort of favorite storylines in general, I'd say Long Halloween. So go for DC ones. Long Halloween. Hush, very good.
Have you read Kingdom Come?
No, actually, that's another one I'm not reading.
Oh my God. Okay, that you got to make that like one of your top priority DC reads, because that actually might be my favorite DC like story, even though it's Elseworld. It is. I just love the whole like the story of it, the brilliant, amazing artwork by Alex Ross, because it is kind of like a deconstruction of the superhero genre, but also a reconstruction, kind of like The Watchmen in a way. But yeah, it's just masterfully done, and like that also has another great moment, like where I read a certain panel and I kind of just get chills. I'm like, oh, just so good. And then again, same for those of you listening to this. If you have not read Kingdom Come, like put that high on your list of like reads, especially for DC reads. It is a masterpiece.
Ooh, Court of Owls, you're going for the generics as well.
Court of Owls is fantastic too.
The first three Scott Snyder stuff. So Court of Owls, Night of Owls, Death of the Family.
Oh yeah,
of course.
Fantastic. And I'm not a huge Batman fan, but that like 3-volume run is absolutely brilliant.
But going for more Marvel stuff, Civil War, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the movie for me was a massive disappointment, especially.
Really?
It might be because that comic's sort of so high.
Yeah, that's
up.
okay.
I think it missed out on a lot of the beats because it was way sort of Civil War's an epic proportion, and you can see definitely sort of nearing the end, like Tony Stark especially does some terrible things.
Oh yeah.
In the film, they're both like just mildly mean to each other. It's like it's not really got the same effect. You know that the heroes can be the villains too.
Yeah, that is a fair criticism, because I like the movie, but yeah, it's still nowhere near as good or had the depth and weight to it like the comic did.
Dark Phoenix, of course, as well. You can't really say enough about the Dark Phoenix. Dark Angel as well is really good, which is the Uncanny X-Force, where they go like back to the Age of Apocalypse timeline to try and get this Apocalypse seed to save Angel, and then they come back and he's conquered everything. It's fantastic. Going back to DC as well, another one I missed is the Dark Arrow saga as well. That's really good.
Dark Arrow.
From the storyline in the Mark Grell.
Okay, I don't think I've got that far yet. I think I've read up to volume 4 or 5 of the Mike Grell.
Yes. I think that's sort of 5 or 6. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so I might actually have that trade paperback. I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. Yeah, I think it is 5. I think it's volume 5. So I'll elevate that on my read list. Just because again, it's Green Arrow, who's my favorite DC character, and Mike Grell's run is fantastic.
As we were mentioning, God Butcher, and I haven't read the God Bomb yet, but
so
probably
good.
is great.
Yes, it is fantastic. I don't know if I have a preference between the two. I guess because technically it's the same storyline, but Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal.
I think that's it though. I'm not sure. I can't think of any others off the top of my head.
All right. So since we're going on about like 40 minutes, I guess one last question before we start wrapping this up. Um, if you could sit down and have like a meal and just like chat with any comic book character, who would it be and why?
Oh, geez, this is a tough one. Hmm. Hmm. It would probably be like a Green Lantern, like Hal Jordan,
Mhm.
or maybe John Stewart, just because.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just want to hear some of their stories, really, like some of these crazy alien worlds. I think it should be so interesting to hear about over a nice like steak or something.
I've actually never thought of that, but that actually would be one of the more fascinating characters to talk to, just because they've seen the vast reaches of space and different alien races and worlds. So it'd be cool to just sit down, have a few pints, and be like, all right, what's your favorite planet? What's your favorite expedition you've been in, or favorite sector of the galaxy?
Yeah, tell me some stories.
Yeah.
What's your weirdest experience? What time were you caught breathless? I think they'd be definitely interesting, just because some of the things they've seen.
Oh yeah. All right. Awesome. I really like that answer. So I guess do you have any have any social media you want to promote or blogs you're working on you want to promote before we wrap this up?
Blogs I'm working on. Are we allowed to tease what's coming in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah, go for it.
Right. Well, all I'm going to say now is Battle World is ready.
Yes, I think that is the perfect tease. So yeah, get ready, people. It's coming, and I think you listening in the community, I think you're really gonna love this upcoming challenge event, just extravaganza. He's got planned for you all.
It's been many hours sat lonely thinking with a little notebook going, what can I do?
I think it'll be worth it though. Once this comes into fruition, I think it'll make those hours sitting writing in the notebook. I think it'll make it worth it because again, I think this is a awesome, fantastic idea, and I think it'll be really cool to see all the various posts and how the community reacts to it.
It's something that's never been done before, to my knowledge. Like we've had a few sort of quirky and different events and stuff, but I think there's nothing quite in this vein before.
Yes, this is where your name will go down in legend in the Comics Amino community.
Yes. This is where I ascend.
You'll ascend beyond a curator. You'll just be Gbros.
Just gone.
Yeah. But all right, everybody. Hopefully, you all have enjoyed this. Less of an interview, more just like a general conversation about comics. But hey, that's part of what we do here, and part of why we're all a community, because we like to just sit back and talk about comics. So hopefully, you all have enjoyed this long-awaited video and discussion with Gbros. Feel free to leave your feedback below. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and definitely keep an eye out for this fine gentleman's upcoming project that, again, I'm pretty sure you all will absolutely love. And before I wrap this up, you all can find me personally on Twitter at IrishmanJake. If you want to follow me, you can also check out all the social medias for Comics Amino, like the YouTube channel here, Twitter, Instagram, and I think we might have some other stuff. I'll leave the links in that below. And if what?
Maybe Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook. I don't know why I forgot about the Facebook, but yeah, we've got a Facebook too. So feel free to check all that stuff out, so you can stay closer to the community. And if for whatever reason you want to hear more of me talking, you can check out my own YouTube channel where I do movie reviews. I actually did a review of The Defenders, but I also do like podcasts about music, comics, movies, a little bit of everything. And then I also have another podcast which you can find on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, called Shogun's Gateway to Anime, which is all about anime. So I'll leave links to all the social medias and podcasts and all that jazz in the description below, and hopefully you all have enjoyed. So until next time, everyone, cheers.